then we will get things started and get everybody going.
I guess while we start, I could put something up where we could just have them fill out a quick poll. That might be helpful. So let's see. So if people want to respond to a small poll so we know who's on, that might be helpful. This will explain how to do it. Obviously, if you're on your phone or something like that, you'd have to open up an internet browser, but it's pretty simple. It's if you just go to slido.com, SLIDO.com, and it'll ask you for the conference number or this meeting number, and it's 48999. If you type that in, then you'll see this question, and we already have a few people who are filling it out. Great. Or I guess you can use a QR code, which still today doesn't seem to be that popular yet.
Or Slido?
No, the QR code.
Oh yeah, they've kind of, although I do find them easy. So in fact,
I find them very easy. Even with the normal iPhone camera, you don't have to switch apps, but the number of people who use it just do not take advantage of it, I guess. And Google Tone is another one that I think is just fantastic. How do you get all your kids on the same website as you? If you set up Google Tone, it's an extension, then you just play a tone with your Google browser and all the other kids are on it. So that way, like first graders don't have to type to get to that website. So. But anybody who's doing online webinars, I think Zoom has a poll feature. So sometimes I use that, but Zoom has a nice poll feature. Skype, Skype does, I think GoToMeeting, I don't think does, because I use that and I don't remember the poll, but a nice little poll helps to tailor the conversation a little bit.
Exactly. Well, it's 4 after, so I am going to go ahead and get things started while people go ahead and continue filling that out. So hi everybody, my name is Jenna Nilo. I'm the Director of Marketing and Outreach for Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. Thank you so much for joining us today. In a moment, I'm going to introduce Mitch, who is here to talk about how we're going to use this awesome tool that they have to incorporate SEL into your remote learning opportunities. But before we get into that, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. So if everybody could go ahead and keep themselves muted and your video off throughout the presentation, I'm going to do the same in just a minute here. And that way, Mitch will have the spotlight here and we won't have dogs barking in the background or anything like that. Or my kid making smoothies, so there you go. So if just, keep yourself muted. We do, however, welcome interaction. We love interaction. We love to answer those questions. So if you use that chat feature on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little chat bubble. Go ahead and click that if you haven't already done so, or if you're unfamiliar with it. That'll bring up the chat window and you can type your stuff in there. I will be monitoring the chat for Mitch, and Mitch will be doing it himself. And then obviously when it's appropriate to ask those questions, we'll get those answered. I'm sure there'll also be some time at the end if you have any questions. So we'll get all of that going. If you are looking for professional development hours, so if you're an Illinois educator, you do get 1 professional development hour for attending today's session live. I need you to keep an eye on that chat window at the end of the session, and I'll let you know that I'm putting it in there. But at the end of today's session, I will put the link for the PDH in there. So we do need you to stay on for the entire time and then go ahead and click that link. There's a little bit of back and forth with emails in terms of filling out forms, getting another one, and all that good stuff. So I will put that link at the end. I'll let you know I'm putting it in there. I'll usually put it in a few times to make sure that everybody gets that. And so I think that's it. So without further ado, Mitch, why don't you take it away and take everybody on our journey today. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, first, thank you to Jenna and Illinois Digital Educators Association. STRUT is developing a really nice relationship with them. They have so many different tools, and they really have a great handle on e-learning, and they've been focusing on SEL as well. And so that's a nice collaborative opportunity for us. So thank you to them. Thank you for all of you attending. I know that this is probably not your first webinar, so I appreciate your time. And I hope that you feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. I might not be able to answer each one right away, but if there's a group of them, I can certainly pause and answer that, or answer it when that slide is most relevant to that question, or at the end. Again, we'll just leave it pretty dynamic and pretty flexible. I do ask just that an individual asks sort of one question and maybe a follow-up question, and then give other people opportunities before you might ask a second one, just so that everybody has that opportunity. And just to let you know, today we're going to cover a little bit about SEL, a little bit about SEL assessments, specifically about one particular assessment. And then again, we can sort of diverge from there where people are interested. So let's just review the poll just for a second, and then I'll start the presentation. So we can see that social emotional learning is the main topic that people are interested in, a little bit on the technology side, maybe a little bit more on the new side. So, and SEL assessments and a little bit of UDI. So that's perfect. That's exactly what this presentation is about. So fantastic. And then we saw that most of the people on the call are educators. So, well, thank you very much for that. So the question we're trying to answer is, how can technology truly meet the needs of all of today's extremely diverse learners? With emotional intelligence learning technology, the answer is that we can meet these different needs. For the first time, scalable solutions can truly personalize, adapt to emotional states, provide lifelong learning empowerment, and integrate within classrooms and schools without disruption. Hi, my name is Mitch Schneider. I'm a former software developer, educator, researcher, and serial social entrepreneur. I'm the founder of STRUT Learning, and we are a high-tech, emotional intelligence-driven social impact startup. I'm proud to represent a sweat equity team of 15 volunteers who have expertise in everything from education, SEL, technology, UDI, pretty much everything required for our startup. We want to create tools for schools and make for schools and communities, and to make SEL more accessible, more meaningful, and lead to real change. Imagine two kids, Casey and Justin. They're neighbors and grew up together. They have similar intelligence, IQ. Casey enjoys communicating, being social, and does well in school. Justin is often late to school, does not finish assignments, and spends a lot of time on video games. Years later, Casey graduates from a top university, has a great career, and has a healthy relationship. Unfortunately, Justin dropped out of school, works hourly part-time jobs, and is withdrawn. What happened? Was it the environment or IQ? No, it was EQ. Emotional intelligence. EQ includes everything from motivation to emotion and behavior management, leadership, soft skills, grit, courage, passion, kindness are all aspects of EQ. Students are not struggling with schools or life because of a lack of math, science, or English. In fact, IQ without EQ has very little value for life. We provide the tools for every student to develop both their IQ and EQ right in the classroom or online. As we know, as some of you might know, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, address, and manage one's personal emotions and those of others. SEL is related to EQ. Sometimes you might hear people interchange the two. SEL is actually a broader term and came from the theory of emotional intelligence. And SEL is really differentiated in that it's the process, the curricula, the framework, the strategy to actually develop EQ. Well, let's look at some of the challenging things about learning today. First, let me highlight two thoughts about technology in education. We know that technology is an extremely powerful tool that brings many advantages. However, you might not know that technology has yet not been scientifically or academically proven to increase academics. It's very surprising. Second, despite technology advancing productivity and customization, our mental health and specialized needs have actually gone in the opposite direction. If we look at some of the stats here, we see that specialized learners isn't necessarily increasing. It's just that we're becoming more aware of it. But yet, high school dropouts, college readiness, they're going in the wrong direction. Number of suicide attempts, cyberbullying are only increasing. And in a society where wealth and technology and advances are there, we need to start looking at, is productivity with technology or academics the only thing we should be focusing on? And for us, we think that's not the only answer. So at STRUT, we follow the CASEL model. CASEL is an international nonprofit based in Chicago that focuses specifically on creating awareness, research, and development of standards for social emotional learning. They're actually, they've been doing this for a long time. They actually came out of Yale and University of Illinois, Chicago, and their researchers have been doing this from the early 60s. Well, they developed a model, and they are working with the education departments of many states to create a framework for SEL curricula. Now, we've taken their model and we use all their research, and everything that we do is based on their research as well as all the modern research that's available currently on both EQ as well as SEL. And we took their model, but we added one thing. We added motivation to the chart. And the reason we added that is that when we're dealing with young kids, when we're working with technology, and when we're working in the context of education, motivation and engagement is an extremely critical thing. Without that aspect being primary, everything else is sort of lost. And so for us, motivation has to come from being buried and really risen to the top level. So for us, when we look at SEL, we look at 6 major competencies, from self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, and relationship skills, and then motivation. And this is all within many different layers of environments: the classroom, school, homes, and communities. And we took those 6 competencies, and then we broke them down into 3 sub-competencies each, for a total of 18 sub-competencies. And these sub-competencies also align well with EQ, SEL, and with CASEL. I'll just pause here as I go into some of the benefits of SEL. If anybody has questions, feel free. Okay. So I'm sure as educators, many of you know about SEL, that a lot of this is somewhat of a review. We actually know that about 70 to 90% of educators are familiar with SEL. For us, we view SEL as the only solution to actually address the complementary needs of students. That's everything from academics, emotion, behavior, social, career, and lifelong success. For us, it not only helps address issues like soft skills, issues like depression, relationship issues, and bullying, it literally also increases academics. It's sort of a win-win kind of scenario, and that's what we love. You can see here that pretty much about 10%, 11% to 9%, pretty much 10%, it increases academic scores, it helps with self-confidence and self-efficacy, it reduces negative behavior. And in the classroom, it's sort of multiplicative, because if one individual student is performing better and feeling better, and they communicate and relate better to others, then those individual students are also receiving positive stimuli, which then can increase their ability as well. And then as a collective unit, and the relationship between the teacher and students. And so you're actually looking at these from a much larger perspective of multiplying on each level, from an individual to a group to the larger group, and then eventually to culture. And so when you're looking at SEL and trying to create culture, it's one of those things where it's like, where do we start? Well, you have to do it somewhat holistic, and you have to start everywhere. But really, it starts both top down and bottom up. Top down means, the administration needs to support it with resources and tools, but individuals need to understand those basic frameworks as well. For us, the surprising thing is that despite $30 billion invested in the US last year in SEL, and it's actually projected to grow to 45 billion, and the fact that it has an 11-time community return and mandated in many states, 26 on one level, 46 on another, the barriers of adoption, implementation, and assessment are immense. And there's significant barriers to SEL success. In terms of scarce resources, the major challenges are schedules. Schools don't have time within their schedules to implement enough SEL. Time, it takes an average teacher about 4 hours to read about the SEL information, to create the curricula, to implement and teach the curricula, to assess it, to follow up. That's a lot of time when they're already working on many other aspects of the learning day. Cost, to buy an assessment, to buy an SEL program, to have training. There's so many more things that it's just another area that you have to add on to for a classroom or for a school in terms of cost. And these are significant. Most schools just don't also have specialists. You might have social workers, counselors, and school psychologists, but a lot of them are shared between schools, and a lot of them are sort of triaging. They're already so overwhelmed with helping specific individuals. They don't necessarily have the ability or time to support all the teachers and students as well. For us, overall, we're looking at all the solutions out there, several hundred. And unfortunately, 99% of these solutions do not address the top 3 barriers for schools, some of the barriers that I talked about: schedule, time, cost, training. And so what we're doing is we're trying to scale that. We not only want to deliver SEL without disruption to schools, we want to increase engagement, learning, and retention. And we want to make learning faster, with longer retention, and more meaningful. Well, today the presentation is specifically about one of our SEL assessment tools. And so I just thought, let's talk a little bit about the state of SEL assessments. Unfortunately, less than 16% of schools use SEL assessments. And we know that this is somewhat of a challenge because in schools, assessments are such an important part of learning. Now, I'm not here to debate, how much assessments are needed, but certainly if you don't have a baseline of where students are at, and to measure the progress of where they're going and how they're developing, how do we know how effective our approach is, our strategy, our curricula? How do we know? And so unless we have that, we're sort of missing out. Secondly, it's about, we're in a time of differentiation and personalization. How can we really personalize or differentiate to individuals without knowing that whole child? And that includes how they feel about themselves, their motivational states. Nearly 100% of all SEL assessments out there, there's about 35, are created by researchers. Sure, they have teachers help in sort of the later stages, but they're almost all entirely developed by researchers and for researchers, actually. We took a different approach. Ours are created by teachers, for teachers. Now, certainly we have data scientists, we have technologists, and many people involved, but they're the ones that had pioneered it. We know that SEL and SEL assessments actually are proven to improve behavior. We know that if teachers take SEL assessments on themselves, we know that if teachers implement SEL assessments in the classroom, We know that if students take SEL assessments, and it's done obviously in a meaningful way, that they actually will improve the aspects of their EQ, which to us oftentimes comes out through behavior. We also know that for SEL and EQ, that it is essentially the basis for the whole child perspective. We have to look at the whole child as both academic and non-academic skills development. And SEL and EQ is primary to that. And we know, unfortunately, that the cost of implementing SEL on the lowest end is $4 per student, and in the highest end, it's about $1,500 per school. That doesn't seem very accessible when SEL assessment is just one minor tool in an array of things that schools need in order to implement SEL effectively. That's just sort of untenable. So for us, we decided to create a SEL digital assessment tool. Now, the website itself is pretty minimal. We're not here to make it look fancy or fun. Our goal is not to make learning fun. I think learning by itself can be. We're here to sort of just provide simple tools that meet the goals. This is a screenshot of our main tool. We call it SELDA, which is pretty easy, SEL Digital Assessment. And just to highlight some of the aspects of it. First, it's free forever. There's no freemium or premium model. We're creating this tool and we want it to be free for everybody. It's digital, so that means that teachers don't have to spend hours trying to figure out after they implement most SEL assessments, they have to go through a little bit of training to understand what's going on, so 30, 45 minutes. Then they have to implement the assessment, typically about 30 to 45 minutes. Then they have to grade each single one and then merge that data and then provide that data with other classrooms and stuff like that. That's really unnecessary and time consuming. For ours, after the students take it, you have all the assessment scores right there. Ours is entirely research-based. We read every single SEL study and every single SEL assessment study out there. We went back to also EQ. We brought in school psychologists, SEL directors from CPS and outside of CPS, data scientists, people who run data and research analysis at universities and different networks, as well as educators to try to create this. It's certainly not perfect, but we think that it more than meets the standard to provide the information necessary. It meets all state standards for how we measure SEL. It certainly meets academic standards. And again, we follow the CASEL standards. One of the differences are that there's about 5 different SEL assessments out there that I find are decent, that follow the CASEL model. However, all of theirs took a former assessment and then reverse engineered it back to fit CASEL standards. Ours is entirely organic. We actually took CASEL's research and we developed it from there. And in fact, we actually went through their website and did a frequency analysis of every term they use to describe SEL to figure out even the subconscious aspects of how they're trying to measure it. For us, it's fairly comprehensive. It's long, it's 72 questions right now. We're trying to see if there are ways to cut it down a little bit, but pretty much we found out that anything that's less than 50 questions isn't really reliable or valid. We also are looking at how do we make our assessment increasingly valid? Well, we know that self-assessments are not always extremely reliable. So we're allowing for multiple people to take an assessment on one person. So this is a community assessment. So an individual can log in and they can take it on themselves. A parent can log in and then create a child account. And so the child can take it and the parent can take one on the child. So you have 2 different perspectives. And then the same thing, the teacher can create a class and they can take it on the students. Now we know that a teacher is probably pretty busy to take one on every student, but they can take it on the individuals that they feel they want to learn more about. The parents can take it on that student, and certainly the student can take it as well. So sort of data triangulation, multiple raters, and that increases accuracy significantly. And only a few assessments have that are out there. Some SEL assessments are teacher only on the child, and some are self-assessments. unless you have that data triangulation, you're really not going to have something that's extremely valid because everybody has biases. Again, when you log in, we're also trying to apply a lot of different science and techniques to our system. What I mean by that is that we're using UX UI. So how does the user experience and sort of the universal design aspects within this? But we're also trying to do things that we think are just best practices and the right thing to do. So we don't collect any information about the student. The email is all we have. We are firewalled from that email. And so you're not going to be getting marketing emails from us at all. The system does do, I think, like when there's an upgrade, it might let you know, but that's about it. And in addition, we don't collect IP addresses. We don't collect what device you use. I mean, there's actually an insane amount of data that we can collect every time you're on the internet. We don't do any of that. Some of our tools automatically do it. So we purge all that data. We do collect demographic information. That's entirely necessary for the research. But even for zip codes, we ask for the school zip code and not necessarily that individual's. It's impossible for us to find out who that individual is. And so one would go to a website that we'll give you the domain at later. It's eq123.org. You create an account. It's as simple as for an adult, it's an email and password. That's it. For a teacher and for a principal and for SEL directors, we ask a little bit more information. Since you're not paying for this tool, we have no way to validate who you are, and information privacy and access is so critical. So we ask you to map out what country you're in, what state, and down to the school, so that we can validate who you are among each other. And the basic features of the assessment are you can log in, you can take an assessment, you can sort of review the details of your assessment, review some of the recommendations. We're building out a lot more features for reports and things like that. And we're going to build out a lot of help videos as well. For the student one, people asked a little bit about UDI. So for us, one aspect of universal design is that we have text-to-speech. So that way an individual who might feel more comfortable, this is not an English grammar test. So it's much more about getting them to understand what the question is about. And then we also have a tutorial where you go through step-by-step by screen. You can only hit one thing to learn about the different features, as well as practice screens where then you can do everything. It mimics it, but it doesn't record anything. So you can go forward and backwards. Things that we do in terms of like testing. For students, we only allow one question per screen. This is a big difference from most of those that are out there. Most of the one long form. The challenge with that is that you actually have cognitive and emotional lag. So if somebody's thinking about the previous question or the emotional state of the previous question and they go to the next one, they might not be fully focused on this new question. And so that's a challenge. So this should increase validity and accuracy as well. And this is not a summative knowledge-based test. So as a result, we only allow you to go back one page because you shouldn't be really changing a lot of answers. So there's a lot of aspects that we looked at in terms of user design and UDI, universal design for instruction. Here again, this is the adult screen. For the adult, we have 6 questions per screen. And for the students, we randomize it. For the adults, we don't. That way, from category level, you can move a little bit faster. Yeah. At the end, you get a little questionnaire that just says, how did we do relate to the scores. Here are the top 3 and sort of the one area that we should improve on. The recommendation's a little bit small right now. We're working to improve that. And here you can say, hey, we agree or not agree, because we need to refine some of the aspects of the assessment. And then you can also you can hit the question mark and it'll allow you to find out, well, what does emotional awareness mean? What does internal regulation mean? And then you have a little bit more detailed one. We don't use numerics just because 80% on one category might be very different than 80% on another. In some areas, 80% might be the highest, that humans really reach. And in another area, it might be higher. And so we use different terms that sort of are different levels. And it's broken down into the 6 main categories, and again, into the 18 sub-competencies. This is stuff that should be coming out in version 2 right now. We're just about done with this. We built a principal dashboard, so principals can also have access to student reports and the classroom reports, and also we're building reports so that they can see things in graphs and stuff like that to have quick access. A lot of schools have to fill out school climate and culture reports. This should very easily help with that. Just some tools that we're building right now. The principal dashboard, that's done. We also talked to several schools. Schools are using this. This is just our first version though. Some schools ask for SEL directors and network people to be able to have access, whether it's school psychologists, things like that. So we're building that. Now, for those individuals, they have to have permission from the principal to have access to that school's data. Again, we're very conscious about data privacy. We're also developing ability to sort of compare results. And if you go shopping at Best Buy, you can pull up 3 iPhones or 3 laptops. How do I sort of compare that among my previous ones, or maybe the parent, teacher, and student ones together? Report section, the tutorials and help videos. In terms of the help videos, we're going to have probably about 70 different help videos that are about 15 to 30 seconds long. So that way you can see, what does every person's view look like? What does the teacher's view look like? What does the student's view look like? What are the basic features on it? And then also like literally every step of the way on how to do something. How do I register? How do I reset my password? Stuff like that. And then again, we're looking at many different aspects of how do we increase that design for access to all different types of learners. So hopefully we've been a little bit delayed, obviously, with the coronavirus. We've lost a few development teams and stuff like that, but hopefully we'll come out with a new version very soon, hopefully by next month. And then we're looking at even additional things as well. We're going to be looking at adding direct assessment questions. Those are like, hey, look at this face. What is this? What emotion do you see? Or in this scenario, what would you do? So we're looking at how do we take a self-assessment that's now data triangulated from other people's views and make it even more valid? Well, if we ask knowledge-based questions, that'll help. We're also looking at how to change the questions to make it negative and reverse-based to, again, add strength to the question. So if I said, let's say a question is, I run fast. The negative version of that is, I do not run fast. Now, most assessments are all positively aligned questions, but when you're dealing with SEL, you also have to have the ability to handle negative situations and negative questions, and these are not very daunting. So we're going to add those. And reverse direction questions. What about the opposite? So that is, I walk slow. And we're trying to see if there's a way that we can try to have one where a teacher can do one on all the students, but in a much shorter version. That could maybe take, maybe 45 minutes or an hour for the entire classroom. But again, we're only going to implement this if we can find reliability and validity on it. And, we don't use Google API to do translations. There's a lot lost in that. And words here matter so much that we're looking at native translations. And then we're looking at issues of like color blindness and visual impairment, things like that. We really want to make it accessible to everybody. So I didn't see any questions, so I'll pause here. Then I'll share some resources as well. Do people have questions? Okay. Well, I will then just continue forward. I'll just share a few resources that we've developed and that we're going to continue to develop to provide value to you guys. So one is an infographic. It's a little complicated. We have sort of the one-page view, and we also have simpler versions as well. Let me pull that up. And I can also do a little demo as well. This is really designed to be printed on sort of a poster or 11 by 17 at the smallest. But this is just our perspective on what we think is needed for the 21st century learning. And this is not to say that we don't value science or social studies, art, music. We do. We find humanities extremely important because that's pretty much what we engage in on a personal level outside of work. What we're saying for the foundation for learning to happen, we think that, and most people agree that critical thinking is now an important aspect, community skills, as well as SEL, technology, creativity and innovation, and literacy. And so this is sort of an infographic. Again, it's very research-based, so there's a ton of statistics on there. And again, we have sort of a one-pager. We also have a Prezi that you can have access to. What is the point of this? It's just to, I think this one probably overwhelms people, but the whole point is to show that SEL needs to be one of those foundational pillars for every student to be successful in academic and life-based learning. This is just another way to present some of the information in more of a PowerPoint type of format. This has a ton of statistics. We sort of aggregated all the different statistics out there in terms of what are the benefits of SEL. We know that SEL, looks like the other pages didn't load. We know that educators have a strong understanding of SEL, but the rest of the community does not. They typically don't know what the term SEL is. If you bring up the term EQ, most of them say, yeah, I know what EQ is, but then if you ask them to say one sentence or to describe it with other words, most cannot do that. And I do agree that most people do understand the concept of EQ. I think the parts that they're missing, though, are one, that EQ is an area of science, that it's not just some loose term that says, hey, some people have it and some people don't. Some people are a good leader and some people, have to struggle to learn it. So what we are saying is that SEL and EQ are now science-driven and academic-driven, and they've been codified. They actually say, how can we actually develop a process that can have every individual succeed in these areas? And this talks a lot about those statistics. Having some bandwidth issues, but here is a flyer that we can send to you guys as well. We're on our website, learntostrut.com. We're going to be building out a demo page where you can access all the tools and stuff like that. You can also just say, hey, let me access SELDA. There's also a page up here that says SELDA. And this just talks a little bit about, what are the different benefits for each one? Why should I care about this? It's just another assessment on top of everything else. It seems a little nerdy and academic. Well, it is a little bit. It has to be. But know that educators are the ones that have shepherded the entire process. So it's a little bit more user-centric than most. So yes, everybody will get a copy of this presentation. And you'll have some of the notes in there as well, because I believe in sort of minimal design slides, so it doesn't have all the details. So you might need a little bit of context there. So for 2 minutes, I'll just look at a demo, and then I think I'll wait for other questions, or we can stop a few minutes early. So if you go to eq123.org or from the STRUT website, that'll forward to where the test is. We just wanted something easy for students to be able to access, and you'd launch it. You have to sign in. Again, it's just an email or a password. For teachers, just a little bit more, a little bit more information, because you want to make sure you are who you are. I think one thing that's really nice about this assessment, so this is sort of a teacher's view. A teacher can access an assessment for themselves. They're also a parent, so they can add a child to it, and they can also add students in, as well. You can always see the assessments that you've taken. If a student logs out or clicks X, don't worry. It'll leave off right where or it will start. They can continue right where they left off. They might have missed one question based on, if they answered that one, but they don't lose any time. And again, you can see if you are a teacher and you did all 3 types of assessments, you see ones about yourself, you can see ones about your students, and you can see ones about your child. And again, you can see in the teacher one, you can see ones by the students done, the ones that you've done on the teacher, that you've done as a teacher or parents. So Again, this is sort of the assessment for the adult. And it just goes to the next one. And if you answer too many of the questions, you'll receive, in the same way, you'll receive some notifications. So if you go a little bit too fast or too slow, things like that. Again, here's sort of the detailed results. We're working to build that Spanish version. Here's a practice one where, again, if you hit buttons, it just tells you what it is, but it doesn't really do anything yet. But the questions will go forward and go backwards. The student one, they obviously don't have all the different features. They just have their own that they can take. And again, they have one question per screen. This one doesn't have the audio on it. That's on the version that's coming out. So I'll stop there. I'll make sure to, I want to make sure that we let you know where to go, eq123.org. We also have a Google form for a little bit of feedback because we do want to get this out into schools probably in about a month or so. And I want to make sure that we have time just to let people know that, you know, this has been brought to you by STRUT and Illinois Digital Educators Association. We certainly appreciate all the time and effort that they've been putting forth. Just in general, the conference was amazing that I went to, but also with all the e-learning tools and a lot of the announcements that they've been making are just fantastic. And this is their next one. And here's a little bit of a schedule as well that they have. So again, I will take any questions, or I'm happy to forward that PowerPoint, and I answer 100% of emails, so except for sales ones. So please don't try to sell me anything or put that in a separate email. So feel free to email me, check out our website, check out the tool, use it, whatever. We're just here to provide as much resources as possible. And in our presentation, you know, I have to plug the people who are doing this. They're putting in tons of time. They're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. Not even, I think, not everybody's up here. So just a ton of talent. And talk about dedication after family and work and the coronavirus, and to do this every day, it's amazing. And so then we're building another tool that actually delivers SEL curricula within social studies that makes everything super simple. And so you can watch a little demo video on that as well. So I'll end there. Jenna?
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you don't mind going back one screen for me.
Yeah.
So first of all, Mitch, thank you so much for this. I actually took the test the other day, and 72 questions seems a little daunting, but it didn't take long, actually. It didn't take long. It was actually rather quick. They're easy questions. You know, when you do these kind of things, you don't want to overthink the question. You really just want to give your initial input. Because if you overthink it, then you kind of, I think, screw up the data. So it does go pretty quick, and it did seem, my results did seem pretty good, I thought. So I think I agreed with everything, quite honestly. So very interesting. Thank you very much. And everybody seemed glued to their screens, definitely. I think you did a great job of explaining. So there weren't a lot of questions, but please, while I finish up here, if you guys do have questions, please throw those in the chat for Mitch, and he will make sure to get those. I did put in the chat when he was talking, and he put up the screen with all of the links with the infographics and stuff. Those looked phenomenal, and I'm sure everybody was very interested in those. So you will get an email tomorrow from me with the recording of today's session, as well as the chat file and this presentation. So it looks like all of those are linked in there, correct, Mitch?
Yes,
okay.
They will have access to it. So they'll get a PDF with the slide on the top, notes on the bottom, and either the top part or the bottom part would be applicable, but that's, perfect. I've already tested that.
Perfect. So you guys will have all of this stuff tomorrow, which is awesome. I'm sure that's what you want to get your hands on for sure. And then also we will obviously include links for the tools and things like that for you guys. So definitely keep an eye out for that. That last session, if you fly back to the other slides.
There you go.
So tomorrow we do have another webinar, just doing a plug here. We do have another webinar tomorrow at noon with WeVideo on remote learning with using WeVideo. So definitely join us to check that out. I did put a link in a little while ago with how you can register for other events. So it is the ideaillinois.org/calendar. So that'll allow you to register for that event and get the Zoom link and everything for that. And then one more slide, Mitch. As you mentioned, this is our calendar of events for the week. So every single day we're doing 3 webinars a day on one idea coaches, one with a partner like we partnered with STRUT today to do this video or this webinar. And then depending on the day of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we have either Apple, Google, or Microsoft, and we'll do a virtual office hours with experts on those tools. So definitely check those out as well. We also started some new Facebook Live stuff this week. So some fun stuff. You don't have to sign up for that. Just go on Facebook, check out ideaillinois.org, depending on the time there, and you can take advantage of those opportunities as well. So right now I am going to go ahead and throw in the chat window the link for your PDH. Again, this is only for live attendance, so yay for you guys for all being here today. If it doesn't show the little that it's clickable, just copy and paste. Don't include the period at the end. I have been trying to leave some space there so people don't. But just go ahead and take that link, and like I said, there's a little bit of back and forth with some Google Forms, some paperwork, but that will prove your attendance for today for our records for ISB, and then you'll have the information you need to go ahead and put your stuff in. And I think that's it. So if anybody has any questions, please go ahead, throw those in the chat. Mitch and I will hang out for another minute or 2 or 3 and answer those questions. Otherwise, we're going to give you back 11 minutes of your time today. So thanks so much for joining us. Mitch, thanks again. We really appreciate this. This was very interesting and so important. SEL, especially right now, is so critical. So we appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us.